Hello, I'm Stan Deatherage, and welcome to Beaufort County. This is Table Talk, and this is my good friend, Dave down east Hudson.
That's right.
He's joined us today.
Afternoon.
Afternoon, nice to see you.
Good to see you again.
And welcome to all of you. We're going to talk about DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And I got a question for you, starting off.
Sure.
Tell me about this wild, rabid, renegade president. Why is he doing what he's doing with government right now? Why is he trying to destroy our democracy?
I don't think that he's trying to destroy democracy. America is a constitutional republic, not a true democracy. A lot of people forget that sometimes. And we've got...
But people, let me stop you. People call it a democracy all the time.
They do.
Why is that?
That's a good question. I would say it goes to failing education because they haven't been trained on what the founding fathers meant with the founding documents. That's one of the key issues, is people just truly don't understand our form of government. Not that it's their fault. A lot of times, especially now, people just aren't being taught what that is. And that's an issue in and of itself.
It is. And we are a democracy when we run for office.
Yes.
And we are a democracy because the people have a right to vote, and it's a very short window of time that we are that democracy, and once these people get elected, they become representatives. And then we become a representative republic, which is very important because you people out there, you people in this self-governed society, have the right to pick those who represent you. If you don't pick well, hey, it's your fault. It's not their fault. They're just doing what they know to do, and some of them are corrupt, and some of them are kind of stupid, aren't they?
They are. They come from all walks of life.
And you had a belly full of stupid politicians yet?
I've had more than a belly full.
More than a belly full. And things are changing in that regard.
They are changing. I think what we're seeing is we're seeing a return to the statesman mindset, somebody who's there to get a job done because the population is demanding it. And that's what we really need. We need folks who have separated themselves away from being career politicians, career bureaucrats, that are really there to perpetuate a system, not necessarily to benefit the American public at large. And I think we've seen that through a lot of waste, fraud, abuse that's been taking place at all levels of government, not just at the federal level.
So you understand my rhetorical question was pure folly.
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to say President Trump has picked probably the smartest cabinet that's ever been assembled in my lifetime. You're younger than I am. But can you remember a smarter cabinet?
No, I cannot. Off the top of my head, certainly the brain trust is there, the brain power is there. The closest tie, surprisingly, that I could bring to this would be the cabinet that FDR put together during his extended period of time as president. Not that it was necessarily the right thing to do, but he surrounded himself by people who are experts in their field, businessmen, folks who had been working in industry, people who knew how to get things done and get it done efficiently in order to solve problems. That's one of the few things that I can really say FDR was really successful with, is creating those programs to solve problems, but then they've stuck with us and they've added to them.
They have.
And that's just bloated the government to the point that it's beyond controllable.
Hopefully not. That's where DOGE comes in. Yeah, FDR was a left of center president.
Absolutely.
But he came along at a time where we fought a long war, and Europe was in the throes of war long before we got into war. And he may have come along at the right time. He would do a lot of the same things that Donald Trump does, President Trump. He would have a smart cabinet. He'd let them fight it out.
That's right.
And then they would all come to the table. They talk about what was best, and he'd just watch and manage, and then ask the proper questions and take that information and help them move and make the better decisions. And that's what we're having right now.
Yes.
They seem to be on the same page, but there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. We saw just last week where I think it was the New York Times was trying to make a big deal out of Rubio and Elon Musk, which we're going to talk about Elon Musk since it is DOGE. And they made a big deal how they were fighting amongst one another. Well, who cares? What if they were fighting? What if they started beating each other up? I don't care. As long as they work it out and we have a better solution.
I think that's the important part. You have passionate people, they care about what they're actually doing, and they're looking to make improvement as opposed to just going along with what somebody says is the status quo. And people aren't going to always agree. We see that in political parties, we see that in daily life, and that's okay. People won't always agree, but you have to find that middle ground. You have to work to solve a solution, find a problem, and then you fix it. And if we can't fix those problems, we're just going to continue to create them and the problems that come from making bad decisions up front.
Yeah, in reference to that ill-begotten report from the New York Times, and they weren't even in the room, so they don't really know what happened. But I'm just saying, what if? Marco Rubio, as a politician, I've been a politician a long time, I recognize that he's a very smart politician, and so therefore he's a smart guy. Elon Musk, well, he's done a lot of things in his life. He created a well-running electric car, and he's figured out how to go to Mars. He's almost there, and he's doing it with his money.
That's right.
So he's a pretty smart guy.
Pretty smart guy.
So you got these two smart guys working together. You've got something now. And when we get together and do these, and we have these commentaries where we want to discuss an issue, and we do that for you, the public, so you can watch us and make your own opinion as to what we know, and if we can help you think of what's better yourself, that's good too. But what we always do is we write down questions before we get together, and Dave has 2 questions for me.
Yes.
And I have 2 questions for Dave, and I'm going to start. But I'm going to start with my last question, and because it's relevant to where we are in our conversation right now. And it pretty much is succinctly this. The left once loved Elon Musk. Why does the left hate him so much now? To the point of death threats. Why? Can you explain that?
I don't know that I can truly explain that, but because I don't really have any issues with what's going on right now. I believe that DOGE is a good thing. I believe that part of the left, their issues with Elon Musk is they kind of feel betrayed to some extent. He turned coat. He was a turncoat. He's not supporting their agenda items, their agenda issues anymore. And so now they want to label him as the outsider.
Yeah.
They want to do anything they can to tear him down. What they forget is all of the things that they praised him for, those skills, those attributes, all the things that have made him successful as a businessman in private life, he's bringing those same things, those same strengths to the public sector now, and he's going to look in and weed out corruption, fraud, waste, abuse. It's just he's doing what he knows how to do, and that's what we've been lacking. You always want an expert, or I would always say I always want an expert in the field that I need assistance with. If I'm going to build a bridge, I'm going to go to an engineer. I'm not going to go to somebody that's building with Play-Doh. You need the expert opinion, and we're looking for that. Elon Musk, he's got that ability. If he can send stuff to Mars, if he can send things to the moon, even if there are failures along the way, he can do it more economically. He can do it faster than we can with a bureaucracy. We've got NASA. If you look at NASA, we've been saying we're going to go back to the moon. And that timeline keeps getting pushed down the road. So now they're looking for outside government contractors to come in and help. Unsurprisingly, corporate America can get it done faster and more efficiently.
They can get it done faster and more efficiently. And sadly, NASA is one of the better run governmental agencies we have.
It is. You try to pick one, that's actually good to talk about, but
and people like Elon Musk and to a lesser extent Jeff Bezos with what's his group? Blue.
Is it not Blue Horizon?
Blue Horizon.
I think that's what it was.
Blue Horizon, yeah. He's able to make a big difference.
Absolutely, and we may see failures there. We just I think Elon just had a rocket explode on launch last week.
Yes.
But NASA, we lost a lot of rockets in the initial program as we came up through the initial Gemini program and all of those. We weren't successful at first. The Russians even beat us in getting a successful launch. So. That's using government funding, that's using government agencies, but we really need that outside help, that outside assistance. And in America right now, over 5 million people are employed by the federal government, just in the executive branch agencies. That's a lot of people. Yeah. There are more people who work for the Department of Defense who are not soldiers or in uniform than there are soldiers in the United States Army.
Yes.
Why? It's just gotten bloated. They're not doing a job. They're not doing anything that's bringing value. And I'll touch on that on a question that I have for you here later on.
Early on in my years as being a politician and dealing at the county level and understanding the state level very well, eventually you got to understand what they're doing at the feds, because the county commission in North Carolina, we deal with all the federal stuff and we deal with the state stuff. Cities are really, they don't do with much. They sweep streets and tax you a whole lot of money, maybe have a recreation department. That's about all cities do. Remember that. When you think the mayor is the most important guy in the county, the lowest county commissioner is higher than every mayor in any city, in any county that those cities are located. But having said that, I was noticing that we had a lot of federal employees, and I thought the first thing you do is decimate the staff. Take out every 10. Yes. And remember, people talk about decimating. They use that word wrong. You understand the word decimate. You know where it comes from?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would imagine back in the Latin or Greek originally.
You're Latin. You're right. The Romans would decimate the troops if they had a really bad battle, a terrible battle, where they ran or got beat by significant odds. What they would do at the end of the battle, they would line up all the remaining soldiers, even the ones that fought valiantly. And they would give every 10th man a soldier's death. They would ask each 10th man to kneel, let him make his peace with his family, his gods, and then they would drive a Roman sword right through the spine, back of the neck. And they did that to every 10th man, and the soldiers fought better after that.
Motivation when your neck is on the line.
So that's what decimate means. 10%. 10% of the federal workforce I thought you could easily get rid of.
Absolutely.
And then, figure out who you got rid of, maybe bring some of them back, and then get serious about who you cut, and then maybe cut more.
Yes.
Now, DOGE is going in there with a sledgehammer. There's no scalpel. There's a sledgehammer. We saw Trump just recently. He said, well, we got to use a scalpel. We got to use a scalpel. And then the camera turned away, and he said, Elon, sledgehammer. And they're working on the scalpel, but the sledgehammer approach is what they're using right now. And it's unfortunate for a lot of folks, but a lot of those folks are going to be brought back in. There's still much more to cut.
There really is. There's just so much that could be cut. Just as an example, there was a contract they just pulled from the VA for $56,000. It was a 5-year contract to water 8 plants over 5 years. That came out to $1,400 per plant per year.
And they don't have somebody
There's not anybody that can't add water to a plant.
Fat derrieres that can't get up. In the VA,
yes,
which is known for having the worst employees
absolutely
in the federal government. I know, I've been involved with the VA before. It is absolutely abhorrent.
It's terrible.
And now we got the former congressman from Georgia, Collins.
Yes.
He's going to kick some butt.
It's about time.
The
VA has had poor leadership going all the way back as far as I can remember. When I joined the Army in 2000, the VA leadership they picked, in my opinion, what was probably one of the worst chiefs of staff of the Army to then take over the VA during a time of war, and then it just went to pieces. So we saw the issues at Walter Reed. You're expecting people to go overseas, lose limbs, potentially die, and then when they come home, they can't even get treatment. It's just terrible. And so it's time to clean house. It's time to find people who are willing to do the work and who are willing to do it efficiently, cost effectively, and give that back to the American taxpayer. That's what they expect.
Well, rather than pick friends of friends of friends, maybe they should just hire more patriots.
Absolutely. People who understand what the government is about.
Or smart patriots.
Smart people.
Yeah, smart patriots.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of inefficiencies in government. And you have a question for me?
Yes, I do. We've been talking about that. But, trust in government. You have to trust the government. That's what we would expect. Our government, as we said, constitutional democracy, or not democracy, but a constitutional republic. But I would expect my elected officials and the people that they're employing to be working to my best interest.
Yeah.
And so as a taxpayer, we trust the government to spend our hard-earned tax dollars responsibly and ethically. Does it not make sense to expect the agencies responsible for those expenditures to be held to account for what is being done to prevent that fraud, waste, and abuse? Not to mention our tax dollars going to support programs that benefit actual Americans, as opposed to sending those dollars to programs or places overseas where we get no benefit in return.
Wow, that's a good one. I'm going to answer part of it because that's a big question. I'm sure you'll finish it up. I'm going to go back. I'm going to start this off with, we got three branches of government, right? We have the legislative, which I will argue is the most important. They legislate law. They also appropriate money. They also, when they appropriate money, they set within the budget law as to how that money must be spent. Now, they also perform oversight on how that money is spent. That's a very big part of it. As a county commissioner, myself and Commissioner Hood Richardson, we perform oversight. For long, well, my first 6 years going back on the board, we're the only people that perform oversight out of 7. Now we have Tandy Dunn. Now we've hopefully got 3. Enough about me. Let's talk about oversight with the Congress. When the Republicans are in office, they work at oversight, but it's very difficult.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about how difficult it is in a minute because we have way too much bureaucracy. We have a lot of corrupt people in bureaucracy. We have a lot of people in legislative attached to those in bureaucracy, and money flows both ways.
Yes.
We have too many NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and some of them are very good. Some of them are very bad. And I made a decision years ago. I'm not voting for any more NGOs at the local level, unless, and that's supposed, the idea is good with the NGO. You think the private sector can do a better job than government. Sometimes no, it's just a shell game. It's a ruse to take money from the people. You people out there, take your money and figure out how to dispense it to their friends and neighbors. A lot of money spent very poorly in government. It's done poorly at the local level. I know that. I see it firsthand. It's done poorly at the state level. I've seen that at firsthand. It needs to be done better. Even though we got a Republican legislature, they can do a much better job. Yeah, they need a sledgehammer taken to them as well. It was worse under Democrats, but it hasn't improved enough in my opinion. Republicans have done a better job in Congress over the years. But why is Donald Trump going at this the way he is with a sledgehammer? Well, let me explain that to you. The executive is charged ultimately with running the government after that money has been appropriated, once Congress is doing the oversight of that money, which sometimes they do not do. Think about this. When the Democratic Socialists had Congress all those years, there was no investigation in COVID. None whatsoever.
Not at all.
January 6th, yes, that was the day that would live in infamy. Worst day ever. 6 people eventually committed suicide, and there was $1 million worth of damage done to the Capitol. Worst day in infamy. I mean, it wasn't 9/11.
No.
Wasn't the first day in infamy, which was December 7th, 1941. I mean, it wasn't even the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which I would argue was like about 100 or 1,000 January 6th, in my opinion.
Absolutely. That was.
But that was the worst day. And it was a Democrat day. It was a day of remembrance. It was a day of celebration. It's a holiday for these guys.
Right.
I'm surprised they haven't tried to get the day off.
Give it time.
January 6th.
Give it time.
Give it time.
Yes.
Give it time. Then they can remember those 6 people that eventually committed suicide. Do you remember after January 6th? This is how bad. This is an example of how bad these Democratic Socialists are. You remember how they talked about all the people who died? They put one guy who lied in state, said he died during the so-called insurrection.
Right.
But he actually had a blockage and stroke. He was only 42. I mean, he was predetermined. That was preordained.
It was.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not healthy, you shouldn't be in that kind of job.
Correct.
If you can't handle a job well enough not to kill yourself, that's too bad. You shouldn't be in that job. No. It's not like you're in the Army and you got to go to the front line. I understand why them guys might have to do it, because they might not have to have a tussle with somebody, get a little bear spray in the face. They have to kill people.
That's right.
And they have to worry about being killed. And our Army soldiers now, they kill people. They kill a lot of people.
People forget that. That's what the military exists for.
Yeah. They're soldiers. They're warriors. And they are used to killing a lot of people, and it's hard to kill people.
Absolutely.
It's hard. I guarantee you that's as tough as it is seeing your buddies die and having to kill others and look them in the eye as you kill them. That's tough. There's a lot of hand-to-hand combat in the Army that you're well aware of.
It's a lot. It's a different mentality, and it's the hardest thing you could ever deal with. It really is a different world when you have to do that. The military does a lot of good as well, and that's one way where we can look at efficiencies in government and how that plays out. I was deployed in 2005 to Thailand to clean up after the tsunami that happened there, Indonesia, Thailand, and Sri Lanka. As part of a task force, joint task force, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. There were other countries that contributed, and we were all working together. We could park an aircraft carrier off the coast of Indonesia and provide power because of the nuclear reactor on board the carrier. We used helicopters to bring supplies in to all the different folks. Non-government organizations, the NGOs, were there doing their work, but we were feeding them intelligence. We had to declassify images and things like that to let them know where these displaced persons were, how we could get them together into camps to where we could more effectively feed, clothe, shelter them. It was done very quickly. We expected to be there about 6 months. Within 30 days, we had basically gotten everything stabilized enough that the United States military could leave and let the NGOs take over from there. That's a difference between how we can help other people outside of the United States compared to how we help our own people. And to talk about how inefficient things like that are, look at Western North Carolina, what just happened here.
Yeah.
And how FEMA responded to that. If we want to talk about inefficiency, if we want to talk about being left behind, if we want to talk about anything that the government does poorly, FEMA is the number one that I could say of just right off the top of my head, key offender.
Yeah.
There was
it really helps to have a good governor, and we haven't had a good governor in North Carolina for decades.
Correct.
And we don't have one now that's very good.
No, we don't. And even FEMA, they had commercials as of yesterday. I was watching commercials last night, and it said, "Have you applied to FEMA? Reach out to us. We're here to help."
But not have a Trump sign in front of your house.
What are you asking me? Have you applied to FEMA? I didn't apply to FEMA for a job.
Yeah.
So why am I reaching back out? If I applied for assistance, isn't it incumbent upon them to reach back out to me to make sure that I'm doing okay?
It should be in the database.
And it should be, but
you might have been flagged for that Trump sign.
It may have been, but right now that's a key issue. Is these organizations that we're spending money on that we expect to help us when we need them are failing us.
Well, the state of North Carolina is going to have to spend a lot of money since FEMA didn't step up and do their job. So a lot of the budget this year, your state tax dollars will be going to Western North Carolina.
That's right.
And we have to. We should. But FEMA, I mean, California in the past, if there was a wildfire or earthquake, a lot of money got spent out there in California.
Oh yes.
And we were talking about patriotism. We were talking about corruption. We're talking about the military. Other than NASA, I would argue the military, with all its ills, and there's many problems, hadn't passed a budget audit in 10 years, but the military is still one of the best run parts of our government. It can be run much, much better, but it's still, I mean, that's what government's there for. First and foremost is protect the people.
Correct.
That's why we have a federal government.
Absolutely.
That and manage the interstate commerce, tariffs. He's talking about Trump doing tariffs. Right. Tariffs, that's what the president did in the past. And that's how we got our tax dollars. Right. In the very beginning, it was from tariffs. There was no Internal Revenue Service until World War I believe.
Correct.
So, we made money from tariffs. Trump's just kind of returning to the old days a little bit. And hopefully to have fair trade with other countries. We've stupidly we've traded in this country. And it's up to the president to organize our trade. He's the one that negotiates for us. He negotiates for us when we negotiate with world leaders. You don't send just willy-nilly some blue-haired Democratic congressperson to go, negotiate.
That's right. We expect somebody to show up who can negotiate on our behalf, who knows what they're talking about, who has experience, who has the trust in folks. I don't need I'm going to draw a blank on names, but I don't need an actor or a basketball player to go to North Korea to represent the United States. One, they have no clue what they're talking about, much less having lived in La La Land in Hollywood for so many years. They don't even know what reality is anymore. And yet They expect
It wasn't
us
LeBron
to,
James, was it?
No, it was
Charles
the
Barkley?
one that was married to Madonna for a while. Played for the Bulls, had the multicolored hair. He's a great Dennis Rodman.
Dennis Rodman,
great
yeah.
basketball player.
Couldn't shoot.
Not going to be an ambassador.
He was tough. He couldn't shoot that.
Right.
Wore dresses.
But or Sean Penn. Let's
Yeah.
send Sean Penn to Cuba to represent the United States.
Sean Penn.
Um,
He'll get on every side of that issue.
Yeah, yes. And that's we expect our government to look out for our best interest, and
Yes.
when they are not looking out for our best interest, the government is failing us, and that's when it needs to be addressed, and that's what I think we're seeing with DOGE now.
I think you answered the better part of your question.
I may have.
All right, I got the second question here. Why has Congress not been able to make the wise, astute cuts in the spending of the people's valuable treasury in the past, and not now, as they must rely on a third-party, quasi-governmental agency to advise the president on how to administer the executive's constitutional responsibility and managing the running of so much of the federal government? And that quasi third-party government source is DOGE.
Yes.
Department of Governmental
Efficiency.
Affairs. Oh, efficiency. Excuse me.
I think it's issues that we've seen that have come along through the government over the past century or
Yeah.
so. When we're looking to pass legislation, pass those laws, instead of really focusing on what's the issue, what is it we're looking to address, what is it we're trying to do, and let's just get that into being. Even something as simple as passing a budget.
Yeah.
Everybody wants their little piece, and the problem, I think, is so much special interest and how that's tied into our corrupt bureaucrats and our corrupt politicians. And in order to pass a bill into law, we're going to give you a 10,000-page document. And there's a little bit of pork for everybody to get a little piece of something out of it. If all we said we needed to do was put in efficient fire hydrants, that's all we should be talking about. We shouldn't be talking about adding all these extra benefits for, well, we need to send $500,000 to people overseas, and we need to, add, a new internet program for something that we don't need because it already exists, and all these other just absurd side projects that are getting more and more impetus and input into basic things. I've always kind of believed if something can't stand on its own merit, then it's either a yes or no. If it can stand on its own merit, it's a good idea. The majority is going to vote for it. They're going to pass that. It's going to be a benefit to everybody. If it can't stand on that and you have to add 500 other things, we didn't need it in the first place.
Speaking of yes and no, who makes the yes and no? Well, it's Congress, the legislative branch. And Congress was set up to move slow. It was set up to move fast in the House because they appropriate the money. And they send that bill to the Senate for reconciliation. But the Senate was a deliberative body, and it was set up to start things moving slower. In fact, you even have to have a 60 vote majority to get it on the floor a lot of times. The problem with Congress is, even with the Republicans, they want to do well.
Yes.
But they can't move fast enough. If they don't have a big enough majority, and you know how Republicans are, it's like herding cats sometimes. I mean, Massey from Kentucky, he can't find anything he'll vote for. Thankfully, he's the lone Republican holdout, and it looks like there's going to be a bill coming through Congress to keep the government running. It looks like the Democratic Socialists want to shut down government. You know, they always accuse the Republicans, even when they have the majority.
Yes.
They accuse the Republicans of shutting down government because, most of them are just idiots or liars, one. But now it looks like they are in the minority, and they're actively saying, we're going to shut down government. We're going to stop these guys. When actually the polls show that only 20% of the people in America despise DOGE.
Right.
The other 80% are saying we might have something here. And the reason is this governmental agency, and this is why it's being embraced by the Republicans in Congress, they're able to shine a light where the inconsistencies are on good government. And they need that. They need that help because they're fighting these other blue hairs and, funny looking people and with very little sense.
Yes.
Making protestations that I can't understand. What I don't understand about Democrats, none of them have an original argument. it comes down from somewhere. I don't know. It gets in their democratic, socialist, propagandistic media, and then it runs between them. You know, they're destroying our democracy. You know, worse than Hitler. You know,
It's
fascist.
yes.
You know, it's all these words that they don't really understand.
No.
They don't know. They don't have a historical context. They've been told to say it. They think the people that tell them to say it are smart. They're just puppets.
They really are. I think that's one of the key differences between the Democrats and the Republicans is the Democratic Party seems to be more and more a coalition party where they've had to go out and find all these special interest groups, all these disaffected people that may not truly be disaffected, but in their own mind they are, and they have to get everybody
Victimhood.
together,
Yeah.
and it's just a mess where they don't even all agree between themselves. Like you said with Republicans, find 5 Democrats you can put in a room and get to agree on one thing.
Well, they do a lot better
They do
than the Republicans, but they're having problems now.
but they are.
And because they're losing a lot of their base.
Yes.
It's just finally happening. More than 20 years ago, I thought the exact same you're talking about, the disaffected parties. We're going to help you. Right. Don't listen to Stan Deatherage. I'll be out there campaigning. Don't listen. He's not going to do a thing to help you. Well, what have they done to help these folks? Nothing. They've just made things worse. And what has happened is the people in these disaffected parties, these victims, well, you've got these other disaffected parties competing with these other disaffected parties in many different areas. And in those areas, nothing's happening.
That's right.
Only thing's happening is they're trying to solve their party a favor, and lately it's been the illegals coming across the border, which had to be the dumbest thing you could ever do.
Worst thing you could ever do.
I mean, it is going to. I think it's going to kill the Democratic Socialist Party. I think it may be the last nail in their coffin because we still don't know all the damage that's been done.
We don't.
And it's the. I mean, we don't know. We haven't had these people, these terrorists coming across. We don't know. The cartels. One of the greatest things Trump has done since he's been in office is he's willing to go to war with the cartels.
Absolutely.
And he's going to use Mexico to help him. And he'll use tariffs to make that happen. And the Mexican people are going to love Trump.
They will.
Because they hate the cartels.
Absolutely.
It's remarkable. I mean, it's like he's playing like 3D chess. He didn't even have to play 4D chess on this one. He's just playing 3D chess. It might be 2D chess. I mean, how did they ever not understand you don't let another country or people from all other countries invade your country?
I don't understand that myself. It's America. We've always been, give us your poor, you're tired.
You come through channels.
But come through the right way. And of all those folks who have immigrated over all the years, they've come to the United States for what we have to offer. But they've assimilated and they've gone on to contribute.
They had to have a sponsor.
They had to have a sponsor.
And the only sponsor these people had were Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. That's the only sponsor. They were flying them in.
Right.
Flying them in. Giving them an app, giving them a phone, spending hundreds of billions of dollars.
Of our money.
And these are the same people that argued that we don't need a wall because it was too expensive.
Right.
It's crazy.
Makes no sense.
It makes no sense. A wall would cost, what, 2-3% of the money they spent in the last few years, putting them up in ritzy hotels.
The only way that I can even try to wrap my head around this was, as they see they're losing their base, they have to replace it with a new victim class. And by importing outside folks who don't know the American system, who don't understand how things work, that's their new victim class. We'll bring you in, we'll promise you something. We don't have to deliver on it. We just have to promise you that. And that's what's been happening for decades now, and people are waking up to it.
Well, it's a little slow. So I actually have a slight tug in my heart for some of those people brought in.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of it didn't go well for the children. I mean, they've been sold into sex trafficking, or in working in factories.
It's organized crime. It
is organized crime, and my feeling about the cartels: kill everyone.
Absolutely.
I mean, just devastate them.
It's the
Holocaust for cartels.
It's the same as piracy.
Hang them.
That's right.
Hang them from the mast.
And they're not entitled to the protection of U.S. law. If
No.
you're not a U.S. citizen, we don't have to give you those rights under the Constitution. And yet, that's been an issue. We saw it with terrorists. We need to bring them in, put them in Guantanamo, give them
No. They need to be in a court of law with the United States.
The easy thing is you stop the problem and get rid of them, eliminate the problem, and that's all you can do.
Well, as things get worse and worse and worse, there's going to be a lot of people brought begrudgingly to the opinion we will do whatever we have to do to save this republic. And I don't think we're quite there yet. A lot of people want to know, well, let's do what's cool. Let's do what's popular. But it doesn't work.
Popular is not always right.
You know, I really don't think Joe Biden got elected. Okay. But how did he get as many votes as he got? It's just scary to me.
The numbers don't work when you go back and actually look at it.
It's done.
I don't believe that they do.
They don't work at all. Kamala sure didn't pick up on those votes. And, you know, she wasn't as bad as he was. She's not smart. But Joe Biden has always been an idiot. Always. And that's because Congress has been run by idiots. By, you know, a lot of them have been in power.
Yes.
You remember he was in charge of the Clarence Thomas hearing years ago. And Clarence Thomas has turned out, a black Republican, has turned out to be one of the best Supreme Court justices we've ever had.
Absolutely.
But a turncoat. Why? Because he's a clear thinker? Beats the heck out of me. Man, I tell you, I'm colorblind when it comes to intelligence.
That's all that matters.
Absolutely.
And that was what America was built on.
Yeah.
Is it doesn't matter what your father did or your grandfather did. All that matters is what you do for yourself.
And there was racism.
There was.
There was racism, and it was acute.
Yes.
But it's gone now. It's pretty much. I think Barack Obama kind of brought it back. It was a politically expedient for him to bring back racism.
I think
popular. He was very popular and got a lot of popularity. And his wife too, much beloved Michelle, but she's kind of got that little racist bent, don't she?
I think there is some there. And having grown up, I grew up in several different places, but as we see more and more younger generations, the racism, the systemic racism, I think that's going away because we're seeing our children grow up together. You know, we don't have segregated schools. We don't have all these things that even, you know, 1 or 2 generations ago dealt with. And we really look at each other as you know, we're all equal. We're all here together. Of course, you're always going to have the bad apples. You're always going to have the racist. You're always going to have somebody who is against something, whether it's out of fear because it was something they were taught. But racism isn't something that you're born with. That's something you're taught.
Let me ask you a question. A lot of people don't know this. But Dave and I just became acquainted in the last couple of months.
Yes.
I recognize this guy's talent immediately, and he likes me a bit. And Dave's going to help me with my businesses. Dave, with the talent level we see out there, you and I both, what would we do if we had to hire this class or that class of people? What would we do? Wouldn't we just hire the smartest we could find?
You hire the smartest.
And the one that could assimilate better with our team?
Yes, absolutely. And that's what you should be able to do. When you're applying for a job, when you're seeking something, you state what the need is, what the minimum requirements are. There are the skills that you need to fill that job, and then you go out and you look at those people's resumes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hire
talk to them.
Or talk to them, absolutely.
Ask them questions.
And you always want the most qualified person. I'm not going to hire my best friend if he's not qualified to do the job. That's just me. Some folks will do that. But that's not me. No, I want the best and the brightest, and that's what I look for. We see that in the military. You know, there's so much emphasis on DEI in the military, and of course we're seeing HECSF roll that back. Yeah. But the issue in the military is it was a merit-based system. The best, the brightest rose up through the ranks, except for the generals. There was an article a few years back, and it was talking about if the United States military is the best source of talent in the United States, why can't it retain its best performers? Yeah. And what was happening is the folks who were really good were so disenfranchised, or they were so disillusioned with what was happening at the higher level where they had been corrupted, they'd been politicized, that the folks with the true talent are getting out in the lower ranks. Yeah. And so the cream's not rising to the top. But that cream is rising to the top in corporate America. The highest, the number one source for CEOs in the United States comes from military folks.
Was it the generals or the lieutenant colonels?
It could be anything. More CEOs are veterans than any other segment of the population.
Well, some of my favorite new Republican politicians are veterans. Some of them don't have all their body parts either, and they're just doing great.
That's right, and that was what we see. I mentioned before, the military is a microcosm of America, the best parts and the worst parts. But anybody that spent any period of time in the military, you learn to rely on your buddies. Yes. And it didn't matter what they looked like. It didn't matter their race, their gender, or any of that. You did not have to teach me DEI to tell me I can trust the guy beside me. I inherently knew that. Or I inherently knew no, I can't trust him because he doesn't do his job. And folks who didn't do their jobs were removed.
They're deadly.
And that's it.
Yeah. And, that's the problem with the American government. It's deadly.
It is.
It's going to kill us all if we're not careful. Look what happened in COVID. COVID was a mismanaged mess.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to say it was Trump's fault, but it wasn't. There were people in the first Trump administration, because he was new. He didn't even think he was going to get elected. If you will remember, everybody thought it was going to be Hillary, and he just kind of snuck in there.
Right.
Of course, the Russians got him in because they spent $100,000 worth of ads to take her out, and they tried to make the whole Russia hoax on part of that.
Right.
Actually, Hillary spent a whole lot of money on the Steele dossier than the Russians spent trying to get him in office.
Oh yes,
It's crazy.
But if you delete the emails and change the story, that's what matters.
Yeah, you got to change the story, man. They used to call it the narrative.
Yes.
We have to have the proper narrative. Now they talk about messaging.
Yeah.
We're not properly messaging. I got a great idea for all of you out there that talk about not messaging properly. Quit doing stupid stuff. Number one, stop that. People are going to know smart from stupid from here on out, I think. Yeah, we talk about education a lot.
Education is a key piece of that.
It is a key piece of that.
And that's another key piece that I would say. DOGE, perfect example.
Yeah.
Department of Education hasn't been around very long when we look back over the course of the United States history. I believe, just like governing, the closer it is to home, the better it's going to be.
Absolutely.
You're going to see those impacts more directly. A lot of folks always worry about, I've got to show up to vote for the presidential election, and they don't show up for the local elections. Those local elections are going to impact you just as much or more so, more quickly than those national level elections. But Department of Education, ever since I can remember watching my first presidential debate as a young child, everything's always been, we've got to improve education. And yet it has gotten worse year after year after year. And supposedly Department of Education is working at that. Why aren't we giving education back to the states? What works in North Carolina to educate our folks may not work in California. But we don't need it to be universal.
Well, the number one thing we've learned from the whole education debacle over the last 40, 50 years since the Carter administration, what we've learned is money doesn't get the job done.
No.
Money probably makes the job less easy to work out.
An example of that, if we look back from 1950 until today, the number of students in our schools has risen about 7%.
Yeah.
The number of bureaucrats in education, this isn't principals or teachers, this is the bureaucracy, those county level folks, has risen 88%.
And state people too.
And state people as well.
And oh gosh,
And
how about the federal
88%.
government? How many people in? It's like 70,000 in the Department of Education.
It's a high number. I can't remember off the top of my
my
head,
gosh.
but what are they doing for us?
Nothing.
They're sitting there collecting a paycheck and then arguing why they
money.
can't get anything done.
No, they can't because they're not that bright.
No.
A lot of them got PhDs in education.
Supposedly, but
Frightening, isn't it?
I have always hated the kind of the language of those who can do and those who can't teach.
I know.
But
my daughter's a teacher, and I used to say that before she became a teacher, and she's always kind of hated that I used to say that.
But these bureaucrats in education aren't teaching. There
are great teachers. And when I was coming along back in the 60s, I think my first year in school was 1960, first grade. Teachers were different then, and they didn't get paid a whole lot of money. They did it out of goodness of their heart. Most of them, they were fabulous teachers.
And that's what we still see here in Beaufort County. We've got a wonderful group of teachers in Beaufort County. They give back to the children. They're involved. They go above and beyond. They spend out of their own pockets to do things that our county is not doing for them.
Yeah.
I don't understand how we can waste, say, $500,000 on land that we could have gotten in a free deal to do a land swap.
And you should have never gotten to that point to begin with.
Exactly. But then we say we don't have the money to hire another teacher.
No.
We can't get a new shop teacher, or we can't get new instruments for the band.
Well, how about all these billboards around town?
Right.
And all the advertisement. I don't think it's helped because
No.
the ADM is dropping. ADM is the amount of students we have in schools, and it's projected to continue to drop in Beaufort County as our population continues to go up. And there's more and more illegals in classrooms now. So your tax dollars are being spent that way, illegals.
And that's just DOGE at a micro level, right here in Beaufort County.
We'll probably, this is a little foreshadowing. if it's okay with you, since you're helping me publish and edit these, how would you feel about a DOGE for Beaufort County?
Oh, I think that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, we'll do another segment on a DOGE for Beaufort County. So, have you asked? You've got one more question, don't you?
I've got one more question. I think we probably touched on most of it, but I'd mentioned before we have about 5 million folks that are currently working in those different federal agencies. They're not exactly efficient, and when we talk efficiency, stereotypical. Think of the DMV. You know, it's the sloth in the movies or whatever the case may be. Or TSA. You've got all these people standing around at the airport and it takes you 50 minutes to get through a line. But what are they really doing? How efficient is that? But they're federal employees. Is it not easier to outsource that to a federal contractor or a government contractor who can do that same job better and more cost effectively than keeping all these people employed as government employees who, if they're not doing their job, or even if they're doing things wrong, there's no real recourse for that. It's not easy to fire those folks once they've gotten into those positions. Are there better ways to reduce the size of that?
This is a declaration and a question. Okay. I like this question and declaration. What I'd like to say, and it's one thing I've noticed, government has a way of finding the worst way of doing everything if they've got enough money to do so.
That's right.
If you can keep money out of government, you're going to have a better run government. The more money government gets, the more corruption you get, the more bureaucracy you get. Beaufort County is a perfect example of this. I've been a commissioner a long time. I got off the board in 2014. My own party knocked me out. They spent like $50,000 to take me out. We got a lot of rhinos in Beaufort County. Well, they brought in some guys from one of these neighborhoods we got where a lot of the Northerners come in, and they're Republicans up there, but they come down here. They're kind of poor Republicans. I call them knockoff Republicans. They started using the word progressive a lot, and we're going to progress. We're going to do some good things. We're going to do things that these guys never did. Well, what they did was they did a lot of spending, and as Beaufort County has grown, we've had a lot of sales tax increase in Beaufort County. We've had a lot of increase in property values. We're getting a lot of new people move in. Our tax base is expanding. Well, rather than cut the tax rate because of the excessive sales tax that we get and the tax base, it keeps staying at the same when it could be cut.
Yes.
Beaufort County grows, we get more money. We got a lot of money sitting around. We went through a bunch of it this year. We went through about $16 million for various projects this year. Some of them probably didn't need to be done, but we had the money, so it had to be spent. But one of the things that's the biggest difference from when I got off the board in 2014, we had about 290 to 300 employees. Now we have over 400.
Oh, wow.
Now, Beaufort County has not grown 25% in population.
No.
And even back then, I thought there was probably a little fat that could be cut. Now there's a lot of fat. You could cut 10% of Beaufort County employees. Maybe you could do it by attrition or some other means. Maybe just some of them that are really bad, just get rid of them. But you have to have management to do that. You have to have commissioners that will perform oversight. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's only been 2 commissioners on your board of commissioners here in Beaufort County that have done that over the last 6 years. Stan Deatherage and Hood Richardson. And now we got Tandy Dunn. Hopefully we can get some oversight. Maybe we can get one more commissioner that will perform oversight.
Yes.
And then maybe we'll get some different management in this county. Because the management has been poor.
Management is key. When you have folks who are mismanaged or not managed, they're going to continue to fail. They're going to continue to perform at subpar levels. Performance reviews are important, but a performance review that's not tied to any disciplinary action for poor performance is ineffective.
Yes.
If I can do the same minimal amount of work day after day, year after year, but no, I've got job security because even if I'm failing my performance review, you're not going to get rid of me. What's the incentive there to help folks?
No,
or to do your job? And that's where we see that waste. We just have to hire more people because the people we have aren't doing the job. So we, instead of getting rid of them and getting a talented person in, we just add an extra person and keep the ball and chain attached to us and just bring in somebody else to do the work.
Speaking of which, you remember when they sent out the email, just tell us 5 things you did this week? And I think Elon came up with, well, this is really just a pulse review to see if they're alive. Right. And we're finding a lot of the people, I mean, I don't know how many. I don't know if it's an incredible number, but it's too many. One is too many, and I think it's going to be anywhere from 5 to 10%. We've been paying people who aren't working.
Right. I mean, look at the debacle with the VA.
Oh my gosh.
They're working remotely from home, or they're having parties or orgies, on our taxpayer money.
And they get paid well.
And they get paid well.
Let me, since we're talking about graft, corruption, waste, fraud, and abuse, I don't think this agency's come up yet. But I just want to use this as an example, because this is one near and dear to my heart, at least in a negative manner. And I've known about this for a long time, and there's not much we can do about it because people don't understand what this agency is all about. I want to talk about Planned Parenthood.
Oh, yes.
An NGO, okay? They're the worst NGO I know of. Now I want to talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. Mostly fraud and abuse. We have people in government should be in prison right now. They should be sitting in a cell looking at a wall, a blank wall, maybe put pictures of their children on that wall. I don't care what they do, but they need to be somewhere else. And we don't need to be funding them. And we sure don't need to be funding them as politicians.
Absolutely.
What has been happening, Planned Parenthood, which says that they're all about women's health and reproduction rights. Planned Parenthood, literally an abortion mill, takes $500 million a year from the federal government. They get that every year. Over a 2-year period, they get $1 trillion. No, I said $500 million, $500 billion. Okay, $500 million. They get $1 trillion. They get $1 trillion over a 2-year period. No, excuse me, $1 billion over a 2-year period. I'm sounding like Joe Biden. No, they're getting, at least I know how to correct myself. Over a 4-year period, it's going to be $2 billion.
Right.
Okay. In every election cycle, they give $50 million to Democratic Socialist politicians.
Special interest.
Not only special interest, that's fraud.
Yes.
That's a violation of the Hatch Act, and it's a violation of election fraud. Those two things. Now, you say, well, why are they doing that? Well, they collect in a 2-year period $1 billion. In a 4-year period, they collect $2 billion. Yet, in a 2-year period, they only have to give out $50 million. And in a 4-year period, they only have to give out $100 million. So they're spending $100 million of your tax dollars to get $1 billion from the federal government in a 2-year period, and $2 billion in a 4-year period to willy-nilly kill babies to protect women's reproductive rights. And I will tell you, when that baby is dead, there's no reproduction going on. No. Not in any way, shape, or form. Nothing was reproduced. No. You talking about waste, fraud, and abuse? This is why Democratic Socialists want abortion to the last day. It's more money.
That's right.
More babies dead equals more money for Planned Parenthood from the government, more money going back to the politicians. And that needs to stop. What do? Do you put the people in jail or kill Planned Parenthood? I say you put Planned Parenthood, you get rid of them, and then you go back and investigate.
That's right.
Like you should have done with COVID. You investigate who got the money and how did they vote.
Yes.
And then you have a forensic understanding of what happened. And then you do a lot of research and you find out who violated the Hatch Act and election fraud, who's involved with that. That's how government works effectively.
It is. And not having a double standard between what you hold accountable to the civilians or the politicians.
Exactly.
If you're deleting classified information, if you're deleting emails, and there's not even a slap on the wrist.
You're talking about January 6th committee?
Anybody.
Why did they spend all that money on the day that would live in infamy, right. The worst day in the history of the United States? Why did they delete all that information that came from the committee? Why isn't it still here for us to see?
Cover up.
Cover up?
Something.
Nah, the Democrats wouldn't do a cover up, would they?
No.
Nah.
But, I mean, it's all about taking that power, retaining the power. NPR, same thing.
Yeah.
Not supposed to be involved in any kind of
terrible.
But we see them interfering, putting up billboards all across North Carolina, picking sides. It's not allowed, but they're doing it under the radar. They're siphoning their funds off to these other organizations. But if you trace the money go back and find out what they're doing.
They have the
That's where it's
worst
coming
journalists. They have terrible
terrible.
journalists.
Terrible.
I mean, I feel like I know a little bit about journalism, and they're terrible.
Absolutely.
ABC, god awful bad. It's CBS.
Yeah. The news isn't in the news anymore. I think we've talked about that before too.
Pathetic.
It's
I mean, if you want to find out what's real, don't go to Facebook. Don't go to the big three and stay away from CNN.
don't just listen to us.
Don't listen to us.
Go
man.
out and do
Go out
your own
find
homework.
out.
Find
Do your own
out.
homework.
But
Read some stuff.
Get
Get off Facebook though, man. You're not gonna get smarter sticking on Facebook.
find where the truth is and follow the truth.
Yeah, follow the truth. Yeah. Well, we've had a good time today.
Oh yes.
Yeah, we're going to do this again,
Do
but we're
another
going to do it DOGE for Beaufort County.
Beaufort County.
Maybe we'll do it this week.
Yes.
You know, I bet I can get Hood Richardson to come.
That would be great.
That'd
yes.
be funny. I don't know if he's got the same chemistry we got, but it'll be fun.
It's about fishing time. We need to open a can of worms and then do the deep dive.
I'm going to challenge you. If we get Hood Richardson sitting right here in the middle, you on that side, I'm on this side, try not to laugh.
Okay.
Because he'll say some things, and you know, we'll be on camera. A lot of times, right now he's sitting way on the other side. He'll say some things, man. I just bust out laughing, not because it's crazy, but because it's so true. And he said it.
You can't help but laugh.
You can't help but laugh. It's like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, get rid of Planned Parenthood right now.
Right.
Get rid of it all. Sledgehammer,
Yes.
then a scalpel.
That's right.
All right, it's been a pleasure.
Oh yeah, absolutely enjoyed it.
We'll do it again.
Yep.